Shalom, shalom. God bless you, my brothers and sisters, Jewish brothers and sisters, and Christian brothers and sisters. Today, I will be speaking of the story of Abraham and Isaac and how it resembles the story of God, of Israel, and Jesus Christ. And my name is Francisco, and this is Perez Ministries. And thank you for tuning in. You're welcomed. And let me just look up for my Torah Bible real fast, and I will read. Okay, if we can go to your Torah Bible or your King James Bible in the book of Genesis, chapter 22, verse 1, and it reads, "And it came to pass after these things that God did prove Abraham and said unto him, Abraham, and he said, Here am I. And he said, on chapter 22, verse 2, and he said, Take now thy son, thine only son, whom thou lovest, even Isaac, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains, which I will tell thee of." So let's analyze this chapter and verse. Chapter 22, verse 2, where God says, Take now thy son, thine only son, whom thou lovest. So this is the first mention of Isaac resembling Jesus Christ. How when God speaks, telling Abraham, Take now thy son. So God is saying, I will take now my son, thine only son, whom thou lovest. So God is saying, I will take my son, my only son, who I love. So Isaac represents Jesus Christ as a son that God loves. And let us jump to chapter 22 in Genesis, verse 7. The book of Genesis, chapter 22, verse 7. And this is Isaac speaking, or God speaking, and it reads, And Isaac spoke unto Abraham his father, and said, My father. And he said, Here am I, my son. And he said, Behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? So there you see Isaac asking his father Abraham that he beholds the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? So that resembles Jesus Christ asking the Father who's going to be the sacrifice for the sins of humanity. Chapter 22, verse 8 reads, And Abraham said, God will provide himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son. So they went both of them together. So that's Abraham asking God about the sacrifice for the sins of the world, and God, and mentioning that God will provide the lamb for the sacrifice, my son, to his son. And then it reads, so they went both of them together. So that resembles and it specifies how God and Jesus Christ went off together for the burnt offering, as God sacrificed Jesus Christ for the sins of humanity. Isn't that so clear how it resembles, how Abraham and Isaac resembles God the Father and Jesus Christ the Son as a sacrifice of the sins of the world? Chapter 22, verse 9 reads, And they came to the place which God had told him of, and Abraham built the altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. So this represents how God the Father built the altar, planned the wooden cross in order, and bound Jesus Christ and laid him on the altar upon the wooden cross. So the crucifixion. Chapter 22, book of Genesis, chapter 22, verse 10 reads, "And Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son." So this represents and resembles how Abraham was going to slay his son Isaac. This is exactly what God did to his son Jesus Christ. He sacrificed him and slayed him for the sins of the world. So it was God's plan. It wasn't the Romans' plan. It wasn't the Jewish people's plan. It was God's plan to sacrifice his son Jesus Christ for the sins of the world. Chapter 22, Genesis chapter 22, verse 12. God said, and he said, "Lay not thy hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know thou art God-fearing man, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me." So God acknowledges Abraham in this verse, how he he was a God-fearing man and did not withheld his son Isaac from God. Genesis chapter 22, verse 13 reads, "And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and beheld behind a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him for a burnt offering in the stead of his son." So this speaks how God of Israel provided a sacrificed lamb, a lamb to be sacrificed instead of Isaac. So instead of Isaac being the sacrifice, he provided a lamb in the book of Genesis, 1500 BC, and also in AD, Jesus Christ AD, or Jesus Christ in crucifixion. By the Roman Empire in the crucifixion in Jerusalem. Genesis 22, verse 14. "And Abraham called the name of that place Adonai Jireh. It is said to this day, in the mount where the Lord is seen." So Adonai Jireh means God will provide. Yahweh Jireh means God will provide. And that's exactly what God did. He provided a lamb sacrifice for the sins of the world 2018 years ago, Jesus Christ. Genesis chapter 22, verse 15. "And the angel of the Lord called unto Abraham a second time out of heaven." Genesis chapter 22, verse 16. "And said, By myself have I sworn, said the Lord, because thou hast done this thing and hast not withheld thy son, thy only son." Genesis chapter 22, verse 17. "That in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore. And thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies." This speaks of the Jewish people, Abraham's descendants, including King David and Jesus Christ. And it says, they shall possess the gate of his enemies. So the Jewish people will be the head and not the tail, and they will always win in battle when they obey God against their enemies. And Genesis chapter 22, verse 18 reads, "And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast hearkened to my voice. So this is speaking of Jesus Christ, how now in 2018, there's people from every nation on the earth being blessed through Jesus Christ because of Abraham's faith. So there you have it. This is the story of how Abraham resembles God the Father and Isaac resembles Jesus Christ the Son, and how he's the sacrifice of the sins of the world. Keep in mind, Israeli Jews, my last name is Perez, so that's a Sephardic Jewish descendant. So the Lord Yahweh revealed this to me about 5 years ago through the great ministers of TBN ministry. In the following video, I will speak of how Isaac received the wealth blessing for the faith of Abraham, and how Jesus Christ received the wealth blessing for his faith and obedience in his father Yahweh. So that resembles Isaac and Abraham. Because of Abraham's faith and obedience, and Jesus Christ's faith and obedience, they both inherited on earth and the kingdom of heaven. Thanks for watching. May God bless you. Stay tuned for more videos.